Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be giving you some updates. We're starting with the FAFSA and Federal updates, then moving on to the state and VSAC updates. I'm Carrie Harlow. I work in VSAC's Resource Center, and I'm a financial aid specialist. I am joined by Stacey King, one of our spectacular Educational Opportunity Center counselors, and she is my co-presenter today. Some of the things that we're going to be covering: we're going to be talking about updates to the FAFSA, to federal student aid, a little bit deeper into education loans, as well as information resources that you have available to you. And I'd like to say that we'll have a lot of information on these slides, but we're going to try to not get too deep into the weeds, but hopefully give you an overview as to what to expect. So in order to get started, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the FAFSA filing and to remind folks that really more than 99% of people who file a FAFSA do so using a computer or mobile device. Now, the paper application is available at studentaid.gov, but the paper application is not better. For this current school year, that paper application is 23 pages long, 14 of which need to be filled out, signed at the end, and then sent to the federal student aid processor. It needs additional postage, and it does take more time to process. In addition, the online version of the FAFSA has skip logic, and so some questions do not need to be answered by some applicants, depending on their circumstances. But that paper form means you answer all the questions, and there is no logic built in and no messaging built in to let you know if you have filled something out incorrectly. So really, we are encouraging people whenever possible to use an electronic version of the FAFSA when they are applying. Let's talk about those FAFSA updates. So this is the second year of the Better FAFSA, and you may remember that things did not go as planned initially with our first go round. But I wanted to give you some numbers so you had an idea comparing the past cycle to the one that we are in right now. In 24-25 nationally, just over 53% of the class of 2024 completed the FAFSA. Vermont showed that 47% of high school seniors who attended Vermont public and public serving high schools submitted a FAFSA. This year, nationally, 59% of the class of 2025 completed a FAFSA. That was actually, I think, as of 8/29. And so, we still have people applying, right, for 25, 26, because some folks will be starting in January. Vermont had 54% of high school seniors who attended Vermont public and public serving high schools complete a FAFSA and submit for 25, 26. So while Vermont ranked 37th nationally in FAFSA completions for the 25-26 school year, that's according to NCAN, the National Collegiate Attainment Network, we ranked actually 11th nationally in year-over-year increase in completions over the previous year. We really improved here in Vermont. So let's talk about some of those FAFSA changes. Things have been happening. As you may remember, things sometimes start happening long before we get a chance to meet in the fall. And some of these changes did happen in February. So in February 2025, there was an executive order that was 14168, and the Department of Education updated FAFSA question 11 based on that executive order to reflect only two responses, male and female. Students who had to make a correction to the 25-26 FAFSA did have to update question 11. However, if a student did not have other corrections to make, they did not have to update that question. That means this year may be the first time they see that question as it's worded. Institutions making corrections also did not have to update this information, and the paper applications for 24-25 and 25-26 did not require a correction in that aspect. I'm going to hand it off to Stacey here to talk about more changes.
Sounds good. We'll give Carrie a break. Hi, everybody. I'm Stacey King. I work for our adult outreach program. And some additional changes that have happened over the course of the year. In August, they began beta testing round one, where they released the 26-27 FAFSA. And we found that people were pleasantly surprised. We had some additional updates in August where the FSA ID, also called your student aid account or your federal student aid account, began to have instant verification. As a contributor or a student signed up for the account, the access to complete a FAFSA became immediate. And then there was guidance issued to double check the information if a mistake or a mismatch was then discovered. There's also the ability to retrieve your login information, which we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit. And then in late August, the second round of beta testing began, and that was a wider release for more students, and families were able to access that. And then now we can see that this is the screen that you will see if a student has forgotten the email or the phone number or the username that they created when they started their FSA ID or FSA account or studentaid.gov account, all the same thing. And this is the retrieve your login information. So you put in just your name, your date of birth, and social security number, and it shows you all of those pieces of information. The last four digits of the phone number, the end of the email, and then you have the ability to use an authenticator app or challenge questions. And if none of those are, for example, you have no access to the email or the phone number, it's not familiar, you do have the ability to then use a photo ID retrieval mechanism to enter your FSA account. Just very exciting for many of us who have attempted to help people retrieve their information. This is very exciting to know what email it was that you put in possibly many years ago. Okay. And also very exciting, the 26-27 FAFSA opened in September. This is the first time since 23-24 that there was an open date on or before October 1st for the upcoming school year, and it's the earliest that FAFSA has ever opened. And we are excited because earlier than October 1st may relieve some stress that has been previously encountered by the system on opening day. Often families would look to that October 1st opening date and want to do it as soon as possible. And so there was a flood of applications that would all happen on one day, which potentially could overwhelm the system and there could be some outages. That has not happened because of the early beta testing. And then this early opening, it has been quite smooth and no outages. And this is what the FAFSA.gov landing page looks like now. So there's the ability to start the 26-27 FAFSA form. And you'll notice below that, if a student is still looking to fill out the 25-26 form for the current year, that is available just below. And then if they've started a 26-27 FAFSA form, the ability to edit that form. And then new this year is the button to accept an invitation for the 26-27 FAFSA form. This is in addition to the invitation that would be sent by email to a contributor, which we have seen previously, that also would be on that contributor's FSA dashboard, their studentaid.gov account. And that brings us to the other exciting news The process to invite a contributor, I apologize, I did not turn off my notification emails. So you're hearing my dings, I apologize. The process to invite a contributor is extremely simplified this year. The student invites the parent or their spouse contributor, or the parent can invite their spouse if needed by simply adding an email address. So for the student, the screen for this to the left would be invite your parent contributor. You just write in their email. Then you can see in the middle section that parent has been invited, and you can see whether or not they've accepted that. And then for the contributor, when they log in to their FSA account, they will see this this screen, excuse me, where they can put the code in that they would have received in that invite. So they will have had to created their own account and then have accepted that invitation either by clicking the button on the FAFSA.gov page or on their own dashboard, and then putting in the code. Much easier than previous options of inviting a contributor, which required the student to know the parent's name, date of birth, and social security number, or for a parent to know that information about their spouse while filling out the FAFSA. So this is a very exciting update for this year. And then there was a combination of questions about race and ethnicity this year. The separate Hispanic, Latino, and Spanish origin question was removed, and Hispanic, Latino, and Middle Eastern North African categories were added to the race and ethnicity question. So now a student is asked to identify their race by selecting a checkbox, and then a second drop-down box will appear underneath it, which is optional. They can further identify, if they choose to, a subcategory that applies to them. And these questions, as always, will not affect a student's eligibility for federal or state aid. This is designed to be a data question to identify who is and is not completing the FAFSA.
And Stacey, if I could add, prefer not to answer is still an option on this page.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and another change from the OBBBA, Public Law number 119-21. The assets that were asked for the single year, 25-26, for the calculation of the need, they were asking about small businesses and family farms, as well as commercial fishing businesses. That has been removed for 26-27. So no longer are those assets part of the calculation. So if the business has fewer than 100 employees, if the farm is part of a family farm on which the family resides, or if it is a commercial fishing business, that is not reported on the FAFSA. And for income calculation for maximum and minimum Pell Grant, they now have added back in the foreign earned income exclusion. And the eligibility for minimum Pell Grant was also adjusted, where an applicant who has a student aid index that is twice maximum Pell is not going to be eligible for Pell for 26-27. So previously, when a student whose adjusted gross income was within the minimum Pell range, would be automatically considered for Pell, and then the SAI calculation was run to see if they would be eligible for additional Pell. Now, when that SAI calculation is run, and if it is then higher than twice Pell, they are no longer eligible. So they would not receive minimum Pell any longer. And this does not apply if the student is a descendant of a deceased service member or a deceased public safety officer. And then the Pell changes, there were some Pell changes made for students that are already receiving full gift aid that is equal to the cost of attendance, which is quite unusual, but can happen for students who have full rides, hard to explain that otherwise, to schools where they have full tuition, room and board, and cost of attendance scholarships, and that cover everything. So their Pell is now going to be reduced. They cannot receive Pell if they have scholarships that cover everything else. Great. And then finally, there is a new aid program that was added in as well through that law called Workforce Pell, and is going to be effective this year. And short-term training programs that are through institutions that were already Pell eligible institutions. So they were eligible for federal Title IV aid, are now able to use Pell for programs that previously were not of a length that would have been eligible for Pell. So these are shorter, 150 to 600 clock hour programs that run at least 8 weeks, but are fewer than 15 weeks. So Title IV institutions only. And the students can't receive both a regular Pell and a workforce Pell at the same time. So they cannot attend and get both at the same time at two different institutions or the same institution. And the workforce Pell will count for their overall Pell limit for their lifetime. So it's important to make sure that students understand this is not separate Pell money. It's the same pool of Pell money that they are tapping into. And this, if for some counselors who are here with us, you may be familiar with schools such as O'Brien Zaveda Cosmetology or Advanced Welding Institute. Those institutions in Vermont have Pell eligible programs. Now their shorter training programs will be eligible for workforce Pell. That's an example of how this would work. All right. Are we
So
ready?
let's give you a bit of a pop quiz.
Wow, let's see. Let's see if you're paying attention. How to invite a contributor. So what information does a student need in order to invite a contributor to the FAFSA? Choose one. Name and date of birth. Name, date of birth, social security number, and email. Email address. Name, date of birth, and email address. We still have some answers coming in. It's great.
All right, we just hit 76%. I'm going to end the poll and we'll share the answers.
Wonderful.
And the correct answer is
the email address. That is it. That is all you need to invite a contributor now on the FAFSA. So for those of you that still said name, date of birth, social security number, and email address, I know we are still having, I think, some trauma from that from last year. But we can let that go. We only need the email address now to invite a contributor. Okay, wonderful. Okay. And now I'm gonna let Carrie take over again.
We did have one question that I'd love just to bring
wonderful.
voice to. I guess perfect timing. Stacey, you were talking about workforce Pell. This question came in during that time. Does this relate to work study or is this something different?
This is something completely different. So work study is a job on or near campus that is funded by federal funds, and it is for students that are income eligible. And so that is a different pool of money. And this is separate. This is a need-based grant that is for programs at an institution that already was eligible for Pell for certain programs that they had that were longer, such as the cosmetology program at O'Brien's, and now a shorter program such as nail tech will be eligible at that institution.
Thank you. That was the only question at this time.
Great.
Thanks very much, Chris and Stacey. Let's get a little bit into these federal loan updates. There were quite a few loan changes that came about from that public law, number 119-21. And thinking about federal student loans and the fact that in the past, if a student was at least half-time, they could borrow a federal student loan and they could borrow the maximum amount if they so needed, even though they were part-time. Part-time students now are no longer eligible for that full student loan eligibility. It will be prorated based on their enrollment. So a half-time student who's a first-year student would only be eligible for half of the $5,500 that a student may be eligible for as a first-year student full-time. They would be eligible for 50% of that. Another thing that changes is the direct plus loan for graduate and professional students will be eliminated as of July 1st of 2026. It also revises the direct loan annual and aggregate limits for graduate and professional students. So those graduate students in the past were able to borrow an unsubsidized Stafford loan of up to $20,500. That remains the same, except for professional students will be able to borrow up to $50,000. And for those aggregate limits, those total limits, graduate students can borrow up to $100,000 and professional students can borrow up to $200,000. Now, we presented this recently to VSAC outreach staff. And one of the questions that came up was, hey, what is a professional student anyway? And so we checked some information from the National Association of Financial Aid Administrators, Student Financial Aid Administrators. And a professional student is a student enrolled in a program of study that awards a professional degree as defined under Section 34 CFR 668.2. Examples would be, but are not limited to, a pharmacy, the PharmD, dentistry, veterinary medicine, chiropractic, law, medicine, the MD degree, optometry, osteopathic medicine, podiatry, and theology. And there may be some more on there. This is not an all-inclusive list, but it gives you an idea of professional programs versus master's degrees that might be a Master of Education or a Master of Counseling or another type of program. There are also going to be Parent Plus loan limits. In the past, the limit on a Parent Plus loan would be the cost of the institution, cost of attendance at the institution minus the financial aid offered. Now there is a $20,000 annual limit per student. So if a parent has more than one student and they're borrowing a plus, they're not limited at $20,000 for everybody. They're limited at $20,000 per student. And a $65,000 aggregate limit. And so I want to think about that for a minute, because if it's a 4-year degree, 4 times 20 is $80,000. So a parent borrowing the maximum could run out by the 4th year of college for the student. Now, let's talk about these legacy provisions. There are some things written into this legislation that says those who have borrowed already before the 26-27 academic year, who were receiving the Graduate Plus loan or who were borrowing plus loans for parents that were greater than $20,000, those folks can continue, but all new borrowers are under these new rules. Remember that SAVE repayment plan? That has been canceled. Following a July 2025 congressional appeal, the SAVE plan is being eliminated and no new borrowers can enroll after July 1st of 2026. The SAVE plan will be fully phased out and it will be replaced by other plans such as an IBR plan, income-based repayment, or the repayment assistant plan, which we'll talk about in a minute. Loans in the SAVE program began accruing interest as of August 1st of this year. So borrowers who signed up for SAVE, they can remain on the plan, but they are encouraging at the Education Department that borrowers switch their plans sooner, but they're under no requirement to do so before July 1st of 2028. But as a reminder, the interest is growing, and so people do want to be, in their repayment plans and paying on these loans. So let's talk about some of these student loan repayment changes. Again, this is from Public Law number 119-21. And new federal loans made on or after July 1st of 2026 will have two choices for repayment: standard repayment and the Repayment Assistance Plan, or RAP. Standard repayment will have fixed terms based on the amount borrowed. So more borrowed means borrowers can stretch out the repayment term. RAP will be based on the borrower's adjusted gross income, as well as the number of dependents that are being supported. Plus loans, consolidation loans that paid off plus, and consolidation loans that paid off consolidation loans that paid off plus. If you know, you know. Those will not be eligible for RAP. They will only be eligible for the standard repayment plan. All federal loans will have to be under the same repayment plan for the borrower after July 1st of 2026. And so that means for borrowers who have loans that are being made after July 1st, 2026, they may have had borrowing before, but they'll only have the choice of standard repayment or RAP. And current consolidation borrowers do still have access to income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, and pay-as-you-earn programs, but they no longer need to show any financial hardship for income-based repayment, which is a change. These borrowers who receive new disbursements or they consolidate after July 1st, 2026 will not have access to those repayment plans any longer. Another part of this public law, number 11921, is institutional accountability. And a program could lose federal direct loan, eligibility if it fails an earnings outcome measure 2 out of 3 years. So for undergraduate programs, they are comparing the median earnings of graduates 4 years after the program completes with the earnings of working adults with only a high school degree or GED who aren't enrolled in higher education. For graduate students, they're going to compare the median earnings 4 years post-enrollment with the earnings of working adults with only a bachelor's degree who are also not enrolled in higher education. If that metric is failed to be met 2 out of 3 years, that could mean the program could lose their direct loan eligibility. By the way, I should mention that there are some other things bubbling up and some other repayment things going on, other federal aid things going on. We're really giving you the highlights here. So certainly check with NASFA. You can check other online options as well as the Federal Student Aid website for more information about changes to these programs. We're just kind of giving you the Reader's Digest condensed version, if you will. I'm going to switch over to Stacey now to talk about interest rates and loan options.
And there were so many changes to loans that we would have to do the Reader's Digest version for sure. If you want more information, there's a lot to read on the Federal Student Aid website. So let's talk about interest rates and origination fees for a little bit. This is the 25-26 information. Each year, the rates will be set based on the Treasury note. We won't know what 26-27 rates will be until about June, mid-June to July. So currently, Undergraduate subsidized and unsubsidized loans are at 6.39% with a 1.057 origination fee, and graduate professional degree students 7.94% with the same origination fee. And the reason we mention the origination fee is just to remind people that that fee is deducted from the amount that is applied towards the student's bill. So just keep in mind that, for example, if a student had a $5,500 direct loan, that $5,442 would actually go towards their bill, for example. And then the plus loan rates for the current year, the parent and graduate professional degree student rates are 8.94% with a 4.228% origination fee. So a $5,000 parent loan, for example, would be $4,789 applied towards the bill. So that's really important to think about when parents and families, students and families are trying to budget to the dollar when trying to pay those amounts owed. Okay. So here are some student loan options. Obviously, the federal loans that we just mentioned, those come directly from the college or via the college. They are referred to as direct loans. The interest rate we already talked about, and we encourage students to accept those loans first because they are have the most secure terms for a student, the most options for repayment. So I guess fewer options now in 26, 27. There are also other types of loans, non-federal, also referred to as private or alternative loans. VSAC does offer one referred to as the Vermont Advantage Loan. The student loan has a fixed rate, and the student loan does require a cosigner. That interest rate ranges from 5.26 to 9.07% currently, depending upon the length of the loan repayment and how soon you begin making payments, and whether you pay principal and interest or interest only. There are other lenders that offer non-federal loans, and they vary in their interest rate and their repayment terms. So we encourage families to really compare these loans. We have an excellent publication called My Education Loans that we refer students to in order to think about the components of the loan that would really impact repayment, including the length of the loan, the interest rate, whether the interest rate is variable or fixed, and what protections are in place if there are challenges in repayment. And you can find out more and grab that off of our website, and we'll share the resource for that later. Parents also have loan options. The federal loan is referred to as PLUS, or Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. And as we discussed earlier, it's at 8.94% currently. And this one we say compare, in part because there is a range of other products. VSAC does offer also an advantage loan for parents. This is also a fixed rate loan, and again, it ranges in percentage from 5.26 to 9.48% this year, depending on the length of the loan repayment and whether you begin making payments immediately or after the student graduates, and whether you're making payments on principal and interest or interest only. There are other entities that offer those non-federal loans, and again, definitely vary by lender. Some of them can be quite scary in terms of the interest rate and the repayment terms. So check those loans in detail. Be sure you understand whether the loan is fixed or variable, how often it can be variable, how often the rate can change, and what the options are for protections. A reminder that the PLUS loan here for 26, 27 will be limited to $20,000 per student. And that for that student and that family, if they have not borrowed previously for that student, that the aggregate limit will be $65,000. For the non-federal loans, typically the limit of borrowing is the cost of attendance minus other aid received, but it depends upon the lender. All right.
So Chris, we do have a pop quiz to offer, correct?
Yes, we've got 2 questions. We'll do one at a time.
Perfect. So, which loan program is disappearing? Which federal student loan program will no longer be available to new borrowers after July 1st of 2026?
Answers are rolling in. About 50%. We're at 61. Come on, folks. Let's see if we can get to 75%.
I think this one's a little bit harder.
And I think we're approaching 70%. There we go.
All right, we're hovering at 71. We'll call that close. I'm going to end the poll and share the results here.
And the correct answer is the Graduate Plus Loan. So the Plus Loan for graduate students is going to no longer be available to new borrowers after July 1st of 2026, actually on July 1st of 2026.
All right, let's do the next question.
Great. And the next question is, what is the maximum amount of Parent Plus Loan that can be borrowed per year per student for education costs after July 1st, 2026?
Answers are rolling in fast. We're already at 56%, 66. Wow. Give it a few more seconds. We just hit 70. All right, 77%. Let's go. 78. We're going to end and share results.
And so the correct answer to this question is $20,000 per student per year. The $50,000 is the limit for the graduate student direct loan. So that is a slightly different program, but for the plus loans that parents borrow for undergraduate students, it will be $20,000 per year per student.
Wonderful.
Great. Thanks. And I know we covered a lot in that section about loans, but are there any burning questions?
We have not received any questions during the last section.
Okay. So let's just talk for a minute about resources and help that's available, right? We have this training that happens once a year, and certainly you can watch the recordings, but we want to make sure that you know that there are places where you can find additional information. And so primarily at VSAC, we have a news and updates page for education professionals, as well as a financial aid resources page for education professionals. On the financial aid resources page, that's where you'll find the recordings of this workshop and Financial Aid 101, as well as a number of different publications that are available and tools that you can use as an education professional or that you can refer to other folks. We also have FAFSA and Vermont grant support here at VSAC. We have opened financial aid, FAFSA, and Vermont grant application help appointments, and those are going on now, and they will happen through the first week of February of 2026. People can meet with me in person or virtually. And dates and times are available on our website and our events page. There's financial aid information on our website as well as FAFSA information. And we have a FAFSA hotline here at VSAC that's answered from 8 to 4:30 weekdays. And that's usually for quick questions, not necessarily, I can't figure out what's wrong with my FSA ID. That would be maybe federal support. We also have some self-service videos along the lines of our financial aid and managing college costs video, how to fill out your FAFSA from federal student aid, and links to applying for grants and scholarships. Studentaid.gov also offers quite a bit of FAFSA support as you can guess. There's a FAFSA help page on the studentaid.gov website, and you can specify by application year. So 25, 26 versus 26, 27 questions. There's a chat bot available, and there's that little picture of Aiden the owl. He will be in the bottom right corner of your screen, and you can click on it to get some help. You can also call the Federal Student Aid Information Center, and we've got the phone number there. 1-800-4FED-AID is what I'm fond of saying. And there are different hours when that's open. Let me say here that due to the government shutdown, a number of things are not available, but the studentaid.gov website is up, accepting applications, and the Federal Student Aid Information Center is up and running and is answering questions for people. So that is available. Additionally, we have some federal student aid tools that I highly recommend that people check out. There is a FAFSA Parent Wizard. Probably one of the most popular questions we get at VSAC is which parent's information should be on the FAFSA. The Parent Wizard walks the student or the parent through questions that will lead you to whose information needs to be on there. There's a federal student aid estimator where it has been updated for 26-27. It's not the FAFSA, but it can give you an estimate of federal financial aid, Pell, direct loan eligibility, possible work study funds, as well as supplying you with this SAI figure, Student Aid Index. And then finally, for professionals, there's a FAFSA prototype. And the prototype leads you step by step to help you understand the FAFSA experience in a general sense. It's not a full demonstration site. So if you click on the info buttons, they don't bring up information. If you want to click on certain buttons, they're not going to give you the opportunity to do that. But it does lead you step by step through. It can vary slightly from the actual FAFSA. For example, there's no skip logic, and information links, as I mentioned, aren't operable. And it requires an access code, prototype 2627. We have that on our education resources page along with the access code if you would like to try that at a later time. And finally, Stacey and I are available for additional questions that come up. We both work in VSAC's Career and Education Outreach Program. And please feel free to contact us either by email or by telephone.
We did have one question, Carrie and Stacey, are wondering if you'd be willing to give voice to. And that question is, how is VSAC counseling prospective students regarding the only two genders change on the FAFSA? And follow up, do VSAC applications mirror the new federal rule? Maybe you can address at least the first half. We might table the second half for Jody, we'll see.
Okay. And by the way, Jody is one of our wonderful people from VSAC's Financial Aid Services team, and she will be presenting with Kirstenbaum next. But the question about guidance around the question, I think that without getting into too deep, what we have to lean back on is this executive order that forces us into making this decision. And I believe the question asks about sex assigned at birth. And so, again, while we would prefer possibly that things were different with the executive order and the FAFSA being a federal document, we do have to follow that guidance. I don't know if that answers that question or not.
I believe so. We can give it a second to see if a follow-up comes through. Nope. I think we're all set.